Today, I want to talk to you about how you can articulate your thoughts in 3 easy steps. Believe it or not, the way that you articulate your thoughts in your words is actually going to determine whether somebody thinks you're intelligent, credible, and trustworthy in a conversation you're having, whether it's a conversation you're presenting in front of a group of people, or if it's simply you just being on a Teams call. Whatever kind of conversation is transpiring, if you are not able to clearly articulate your thoughts and the things that you're trying to share, you start to lose that credibility and people think of you differently. Yes, it's an unfortunate thing, but fortunately for you, there is a way that we can change that. We may not be able to change the way that we look and how we sound, but we can change the way that we are perceived through the way that we articulate our message. And when I say sound, I mean my voice. Yes, we can change the way we sound, if we sound intelligent or not, based on the way that we can articulate. And so I want to give you 3 steps today that you can start doing really every day to help you improve. And the first one, I actually really struggle with this a lot, but it's reading. And not just reading, and I don't mean let me go read some Facebook posts. I mean reading self-development books. You really need to start enriching yourself in new books with new ideas to really help expand your mind. Because when we go to speak to people, we're not only speaking from we are speaking from what's in our mind here, but if we're just stuck and we're like that person that was the high school national champion or state champion or whatever, and that's all they talk about, we look at them, we're like, man, you're kind of a loser now. Like, yeah, your high point was in high school. Like, that's pretty sad. And that's great that you've won the high school state championship for your football team. But come on, man. You've got to have more to you than that. That can't be the highlight of your whole life, and now you're 45 and you still talk about that. Sure, it's going to come up. But if that's the only thing you talk about, and every time you try and talk about that, that means that you haven't expanded yourself. So same thing when it comes to our thoughts. We pull from the things that we have exposed ourselves to. So a lot of times that comes through actual action we're taking within our life, our business. But when we read books, we're able to extract a lot of knowledge, a lot of data from people that have experienced that as well. So reading will really help you. But not only reading, I want to add an additional thing here. While reading will help, read out loud. And this is where I struggle because I've been trying to read to my daughter. She's 2.5. And there are times that I struggle. And it was really weird because it actually said, instead of it's, like IT-S or apostrophe S, whatever, clearly not great at literature itself, but it said it is, and that kept stumping me, trying to say it is out loud rather than it's. I wanted to naturally say it's, but as I was reading it and trying to say it out loud, my mind was processing it's, trying to put it all together, but then I also wanted to say it how it literally said it on the page, so I'm trying to say it is. Now, my daughter's not old enough to really be reading yet to herself, so that's not something maybe necessary, but I was still struggling with that. And as I'm reading through these really simple books, I realized I'm struggling to articulate some of these words. And so if you want to help yourself not get tongue-tied, not only read so you have more knowledge to be able to pull from as you're having a conversation, but also read out loud. And maybe you're not reading the same book. Maybe you are. That's even better. But you could start with a easier book, such as a children's book, to help you with reading out loud. But when we read out loud, it helps us to be able to articulate words even more, not just be able to pull in information so we can have that for later when we do go to speak, but it allows us to actually start articulating. Number 2 is actually writing down your thoughts. So as you're having thoughts, write down exactly what that is. So maybe you're like, man, I really wish that so-and-so would help me out with this problem. And that's pretty much all you write. Well, if your thought was, hey, I hope that so-and-so, my spouse, helps me out with this task today, and that's all you wrote, and your expectation is based on your thought that she's going to do that, do you think that's really going to actually work out? Or even if you said, hey, can you help me? That's not a great thing. And so you have to explain more of, hey, will you help me with the dishes? There's a lot of dishes and I would really appreciate some help since I'm trying to do them all by hand. If you could dry them for me. That's a very thought out, very articulated statement now. So now you're writing that out. So as you're writing this out, it helps you to really think about it because you're thinking about it, you're writing this out now, and so now you're able to really formulate a sentence and see if that makes sense. So writing out will be the next thing to really help you so you can learn to articulate more. And I think about like standard operating procedures when I think about writing out. In your mind, you're like, okay, here's step 1, step 2, step 3. You're done. You filled in the Control C, Control V. Go to this software site. Go over here. Look in this folder location. Like you just know how to do those things. But as you're writing them down, you're like, wait a second. I didn't put this. I didn't put that. And so you have to go back in and fill those things out. And so by you writing down, it helps you understand whether you're speaking on a level that somebody else can understand what they need to do or not. So that's why we start to write it down. But then finally starting to speak. So going back to the example of my wife, I was kind of using it with writing, but same thing. If I just said out loud to her, hey, help me out. Okay, she's going to sit there. What do you need help with? Maybe she's on the defensive, maybe she's not, but okay, what do you need help with? Or if you tell an employee that, hey, help me out. Okay, that's great, but what do you need help with? But if you start saying, hey, I need you to help me pick up this thing over here so we can move it over to this other location. Now they know, okay, you need help right now. We're going to get this thing right here and we're going to move it somewhere else. Even if you don't tell them exactly where, but if you're lifting it, you're going to take it somewhere and they're just going to follow your lead. But now they can actually take some kind of action because you didn't just say, hey, help me here. You actually told them what we're going to do. Lift this thing up, move it over here. So you're learning to actually speak more about what you're doing and speak on that more. But now you're actually getting to the point where what you're trying to do is be able to articulate what you're trying to say. And so now you can start practicing that by literally speaking. And that's the biggest thing. You have to be speaking in order to get better at speaking. You will have tongue ties. You will have word slips. You'll have brain farts as you're speaking, but you have to start speaking more and more and more. But the 3 ways that you can help yourself be able to articulate better is 1, start with reading. Not only reading for yourself to gain more knowledge, but also reading out loud so you can start that process of really step 3 of speaking out loud, of articulating a message, which would be the book, not your message per se. And then writing out your thoughts. So now you're starting to articulate your thoughts on paper, and then finally speaking out your thoughts. So you've thought them, now you're speaking them out. And as you're getting this repetition, you're going to get better at articulating that message. And those are the 3 steps on how you can get better at articulating your message.